When a pilot suffers a heart attack mid-flight, a former soldier steps in to save the passengers. But he has no idea the woman he saved is the daughter of a millionaire, and what happens next will leave everyone speechless. The plane hummed steadily at 35,000 feet, the seatbelt sign off as passengers settled into their mid-flight routines. Ryan Walker, a former Air Force pilot, leaned back in his seat, eyes closed, trying to enjoy a rare moment of peace. It had been years since he last flew a plane. After leaving the military, he had stepped away from the skies, choosing a quiet life instead. But fate had other plans. A sudden commotion up front made his eyes snap open. Then, the captain's voice cracked over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, if there's anyone with flight experience on board, we need assistance in the cockpit immediately." Ryan stiffened. That was never a good sign. Passengers began murmuring, heads turning toward the front. A flight attendant rushed past, her face pale. Something was very wrong. Ryan unbuckled his seatbelt and stood. He wasn't the type to ignore a crisis. As he moved toward the cockpit, he noticed a young woman in first class, her hands clenched, panic in her eyes. She was gripping her phone tightly, her lips moving in silent prayer. Ryan didn't have time to think about it. Right now, the only thing that mattered was getting into that cockpit, and when he stepped inside, his blood ran cold. The pilot was slumped over, unconscious. The co-pilot was struggling, his voice shaking as he fought to keep the aircraft steady. Ryan took a deep breath. He had just gone from passenger to pilot, and the lives of everyone on board now rested in his hands. The cockpit was in chaos. Alarms were blaring, lights flashing, panic filled the air. The co-pilot's hands trembled as he gripped the controls. "The captain, he just collapsed. I think it was a heart attack." His voice was strained, fear creeping in. I can't do this alone." Ryan's instincts kicked in. No hesitation, no fear, just training. "I've got you," Ryan said, sliding into the pilot's seat. The feel of the controls under his fingers sent a rush of old muscle memory through him. "Tell me the status." The co-pilot gulped, nodding quickly. "We're cruising at 35,000 feet, autopilot engaged, but we're supposed to start descent in 20 minutes. Ryan took a deep breath. He had flown military jets, not commercial airliners, but flying was flying. The principles were the same. "We're going to land this plane," he said firmly. Not for himself, but for the hundreds of souls sitting behind him. The co-pilot exhaled shakily. "You really know how to fly this thing?" Ryan's lips quirked into a smirk despite the situation. "I guess we'll find out." With steady hands, he took control. The next few minutes would determine everything. Meanwhile, in the cabin, the young woman in first class, Ava Reynolds, watched with wide eyes. She had never felt this helpless before. Her father always told her money could solve anything, but not this. Right now, her life. All their lives depended on a complete stranger, and she had no idea just how much this moment would change everything. Ryan's hands gripped the controls as he steadied the aircraft. The weight of hundreds of lives pressed down on him, but he didn't let it shake him. "All right," he said, his voice calm despite the tension. "We need to contact air traffic control. Get them on the radio." The co-pilot scrambled to adjust the radio frequency. "This is Flight 742 declaring a medical emergency. Our captain is down and an experienced pilot is taking over." A crackle of static, then a voice responded. "Flight 742, we copy. Who is the pilot in command?" Ryan took the headset. "Ryan Walker, former Air Force pilot. I have control." A pause. Then, "Roger that, Captain Walker. We're guiding you in. Do you have experience with commercial landings?" Ryan exhaled slowly. "Not exactly, but I can handle it." In the cabin, passengers whispered nervously. The realization had set in. They were depending on a stranger. Ava sat frozen, gripping her armrests. She stole a glance at the flight attendant, whose face was tight with fear. They were trusting a man they didn't know to bring them home. Her father always told her that power and wealth were everything, that in life it's who you know that keeps you safe. But right now, none of that mattered. Right now, their survival rested in the hands of someone she had never met, and she could only pray that he was the kind of man who didn't back down from the impossible. Back in the cockpit, Ryan's eyes locked on the instruments. "All right," he muttered. "Let's bring this bird down." And with that, the descent began. The plane began its slow descent, and every second felt like an eternity. Ryan kept his breathing steady, his focus locked on the controls. "Flight 742, you are cleared to land at runway 3 left," air traffic control instructed. "Winds are light, visibility is clear. Do you have control of the flaps and landing gear?" Ryan scanned the panel, his mind racing. "I see them. I'll need the co-pilot to assist." The co-pilot nodded frantically. "Tell me what to do." Ryan's voice was firm, steady. "Calm breeds calm. Lower the flaps when I say, and make sure the landing gear is ready." The co-pilot got to work, his fingers moving over the controls, his panic slowly fading as Ryan took command of the situation. Back in the cabin, tension was thick enough to cut. Ava's nails dug into her palm as she stole another glance at the cockpit door. They were almost there, but almost wasn't enough. Her heart raced as the plane dipped lower, the pressure shifting. Outside the window, the runway lights gleamed in the fading daylight. It was so close, but the hardest part was still ahead. The intercom crackled to life, and Ryan's voice came through, strong, controlled, a voice people could trust. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are making our final approach. Stay in your seats, stay calm, and we'll have you safely on the ground soon." A flight attendant whispered. "He sounds like he's done this 1,000 times. Ava swallowed. But he hadn't. Not like this. In the cockpit, Ryan tightened his grip. No turning back now. "Lowering landing gear," the co-pilot announced. Ryan exhaled. One shot. That's all he had. "Here we go." The runway rushed toward them, the wheels locked into place, and Ryan prepared to do the impossible.